Hi.
After the birth of your new baby, you need support. Come join me in a discussion with Pritchard, RN, Doula, Certified Lactation Educator, in this episode of Pacific Occurrence. In this episode of Pacific Occurrence, we'll be talking about after baby's birth, postpartum support. I have two guests this evening. One is Pritchard, RN, Doula, Certified Lactation Educator, internationally board certified lactation consultant student, and facilitator of Mama Circle for 20 years. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you.
We also have Daniela Barbosa, new mom, and a consultant for a global media company. Welcome, Daniela.
Thank you.
Tell me how you started getting involved with birth and moms and everything. How did that happen?
A very good friend of mine was having a baby, and she decided to have the baby at home. And that was unheard of in Rhode Island. And she employed an illegal lay midwife. And I got to help that midwife catch this baby. And it was a 10-pound baby born over an intact perineum, which is unheard of, especially back then. And as the sun was rising over the ocean right outside with the waves pounding, it was just a beautiful birth. It was very inspirational. And then the very next day I had to do it as my clinical rotation, go to the local hospital, where in OB I was helping a mother in labor who was, strapped up in the stirrups, pushed into the delivery room, cut, washed, and the baby flopped out and taken away and suctioned, and it went on. And that was obviously a big turning point for me. I, right then and there, decided I was going to be a midwife and very involved in a different way of birthing babies than what I was seeing around me. So,
you're helping moms now more after the birth,
yeah,
than during birth.
Yeah, I was a midwife assistant for a long time. I worked as an RN and OB for many years, doing both low risk and high risk deliveries in a hospital. And went to do home births with a midwife we know, and basically got a really well-rounded view of how that all went, but then couldn't be on call anymore. The 24/7 really got to me. So I was able to work my schedule with being a doula and learning how to basically focus more on the postpartum period, after, which basically means after the baby's come out. And so a friend of mine and I decided to open up a business together and called Mama to Mama. And basically we go to people's homes, help them with breastfeeding. That's our big focus, because a lot of people have difficulty with breastfeeding. It is not necessarily an intuitive thing. It's more intuitive, I think, for the baby than it is for the mother. Support them at home. Sometimes we cook meals, sometimes we go grocery shopping, we tuck them into bed, we tell them to go to sleep, we watch the baby, they take a shower, maybe we'll do a load of laundry, that kind of thing, and it's kind of like being a big sister. And I really enjoy it because it's very intimate, it's in the family, it's in the home, you get to see the whole family together in the dynamic, and it's a much more intimate experience than, for instance, in the hospital. And we get to resolve problems right away. The breastfeeding, I'm very dedicated to breastfeeding as being sort of the answer to a lot of our health problems in this country. And I think the Obamas are on board with that right now.
I was telling you earlier, I had really prepared for my birth, but then I kind of wasn't quite as prepared for after the birth. Mm-hmm. And I think the things you have told me, they really help. And Daniela, I wanted to talk to you a little just about your experience with Mama to Mama, mm-hmm. and with Chris, and how you got involved.
It was a wonderful time to spend with other mothers. There was mothers there that had,
babies that were 3 months, 4 months old, and others that had 2 toddlers already. And it really gave me an opportunity to sort of see other mothers with their children. I don't have any friends that have small children. I had already spoken to Chris a couple of times, and I knew that she was going to do some postpartum doula work for us as well. But really being with the other moms during that period as I was preparing myself for birth was really important, and it continues to be. I've been going to Mama Circle now for over 14 months, as I have a 14-month-old baby.
What do you talk about in those circles?
Well, it's pretty much mama-led. I don't have a format per se. Sometimes we have to pass a talking stick so that if there's someone who comes in and is very talkative, they only get a certain amount of time with the stick. But that hasn't happened in a long time. We've actually got a really good group who's very conscious of each other, and basically the topics that I've heard over the last 20 years are about breastfeeding. The big issues are other people in people's lives telling them to stop breastfeeding. It's time now. You reached the 6-month point or the year point. When are you going to wean? Your baby's going to be a mama's boy, or they're going to be spoiled, or all of that is crazy. So we spend a lot of time normalizing breastfeeding, allowing like the new moms to see other moms who have been doing it for a while, like it's nothing, like it's just everyday kind of activity. And I think that's the best part of it, honestly, is the women with more experience kind of passing that along to the women with less experience, which is probably what we did 200 or 300 years ago in groups of people. We watched our mothers and our sisters give birth, and then we watched them nurse, and we learned from them. And we've had several generations not doing any of those things, not birthing in front of each other, not dying in front of each other, and certainly not breastfeeding in front of each other. So part of that is to normalize it and to create community around breastfeeding. So breastfeeding is one of the things, when people ask me, they'll come in and they'll say, oh, my baby's got green poop, what does that mean? So I can answer that, kind of normalize things, or some of the other moms could answer it. Or, is it okay to feed my baby wheat or give them cereal when they're 4 months? My doctor says to give them. So we kind of debunk some of the information they're getting from outside a little bit, and just kind of make it more, basically, the information is based on science, and we have science to back up everything we've known all along. So that's what I like about it, and that's what I like about being a student of lactation, is that I'm learning all the latest stuff, and we have the great studies to back it all up now. So some of the other topics are, of course, sleeplessness. What do I do when I have to wake up all night long nursing? Partners, family members, issues with partners, issues with family members, developmental milestones, teeth, vaccines. I try not to give my opinion too much about vaccinations because I think it's a really personal issue, but we talk a lot about those things.
Right. And we help each other, so around things like vaccines or anything else, maybe I'll share my personal experience with my doctor, with my pediatrician, and we can talk about how do you talk to a pediatrician, and some of the medical advice and things that you should talk about. So, and I think we were talking about this before, you can read this in the book, you can go online and find a lot of advice, but sitting in the room with Chris and other mothers once a week for 2.5 hours is really grounding and nurturing. You really feel that you're part of a community of mamas, and I think that's one of the things that I've found the most valuable in meeting Chris and meeting the other mamas. I've seen the cycle. There's now new mamas that I'm teaching, which is makes me feel very good about
Big
that, because I've taken that role off with the other moms have sort of moved on. So it's a very nurturing. It's really that community of sisters, sister wives, mothers, cousins, that because you don't have a lot of family, at least I myself, I don't have family here, they're all on the East Coast, a lot of my old friends, but you're creating an environment that you are learning and nurturing each other as you go through motherhood, and I think that's so important. It's made me sane over the last year.
And I don't think you're alone. I think a lot of, with all the movement, people move a lot now. I think a lot more than, even when our mothers were born or our grandmothers were born. So I think these kind of communities are really important to get established and to help each other out.
And motherhood can be very isolating. You're staying at home, you're nursing all day long. You want to put the baby down for naps. It's kind of hard. Of course, having 3 kids, you probably scooped up the other ones and off the baby goes in the car seat and sleeping there. It's a little different when you have multiple kids, but it's a very isolating experience, and it shouldn't be. And I think that's relatively new, and that's like a product of industrialization and our culture. And we're just trying to shift that around a little. If people can stay at home from work for a while, or kind of juggle work like Daniela does, and come to Mama Circle and then go to work as a full-time executive or whatever it is she does very well out in the world, and just really find a way to have that community to support have her back, kind of.
And there's real issues as a full-time going back to work mother who is nursing, continues to nurse, and pumping, and I've had the same issues that now the new mamas, for example, have. The other day we got an email from a mother. It was the first day back at work, and she was just starting to pump, and she didn't pump that much, and she was a little worried, and she sent out an email to our email list. And I happened to be at work, but I saw on my BlackBerry, I saw the message, and I replied back. My first day back at work was the same thing, thinking about my coworkers or thinking about me being in the room nursing without a shirt on, and it totally calmed her down. And she replied back a couple hours later, things are better. And the next week she came, and we all said, "Good for you." And I hope that in another 6 months or 8 months, she does that to another mama that comes to Mama Circle, sort of the circle of the mama.
Right, and supporting each other even through work, even when you have to go back to work, there's people there to help you.
Absolutely.
That's great.
And the people in the group are going to laugh at this, but I always say, all mothers are working mothers. And of course, you're going back to work outside the home for pay. We're going to qualify that.
Yeah, good.
Because all mothers are nursing mothers 24 hours a day. So
we have a short video of baby Charlotte and her mama Becky at Mama Circle.
Hi, I'm Becky, and this is Charlotte. She's 10 months old. We live in El Granada. Coming to Mama Circle has given me an outlet for all of my worries or all of my questions about parenting. I've always loved babies, and I've always been around babies when I was younger, and I thought that I would be so much more comfortable and so much more knowledgeable about what was going to be going on once I was a parent. But my gosh, once I had Charlotte, there's so many things that have come up, such as the milk duct issues and her being a very distracted eater, things that are common but not that I didn't know about before, that I've learned about being at Mama Circle, and just seeing other mothers who are going through different things, and knowing that I'm not alone, and people with older babies, that I can see what's ahead for me, what's coming, and sort of think ahead a little bit. It's been great, and I love that it's a small group, or relatively small compared to a lot of other mothers groups, where Charlotte gets to know the other kids well, and I get to know the other mothers well, and feel comfortable talking in front of them, and feel relaxed about coming here. It's never a chore to leave the house and come. We always look forward to it. It's like a little family. And my family is far away. They're on the East Coast, and so my husband and I are out here doing this on our own. We have a lot of family support, but they're just far away. And so to be able to come here has just been unbelievably wonderful. I don't know how I would have done any of this without Chris and without the other moms here, really.
That was fun to see Charlotte and Becky. Right before we went to the video, you had talked about all moms should be lactation moms, should be lactating all day. I wanted to get back to the lactation and breastfeeding. So can you give us a little more information about some of the benefits of breastfeeding?
Sure, there are many. And as I mentioned before, childhood obesity is a big issue in this country. Obesity in general is a big issue in this country. And I think it's because we've gotten away from breastfeeding. I think it's the perfect food. It's perfectly digested. It's exactly what we need. They're even using it for cancer treatment now. We're going to see a lot in the future with breast milk. Breast milk is the medicine of the future. Some of the ways that it benefits babies are that we see a lower incidence of many, many diseases. 15, 20 diseases have been documented to have been lowered by exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months at least. And that's the goal in this country. By the way, the Surgeon General in 2000 had a goal of 75% initiation rate, which just means that the baby tried breastfeeding right after birth. It may mean they don't breastfeed again, ever again, but at least the initiation was tried. And the other goal was 50% of all babies in the United States would be breastfeeding at 6 months. And that is the recommendation. The AAP, American Association of Pediatrics, recommends only breast milk. That means no sugar water, no formula, nothing except breast milk for the first 6 months. And then solid foods beginning only after 6 months when the baby shows interest, grabbing food, able to keep it in their mouth. Some babies will do it a little earlier, but in general, 6 months is around the time developmentally that babies want solid foods. And then, of course, the breastfeeding rates around the whole world, the average is somewhere between breastfeeding up to 2.5 years to 7 years old. And so historically, you know, supposedly Geronimo nursed till he was 7. So there were great leaders out there nursing for a long time. That could be hearsay, I don't know. But I want to believe it because it is the perfect food. And it affords babies protection from diabetes, from all kinds of GI problems, you know, colitis. It also diminishes SIDS. The statistics for SIDS are lower when babies breastfeed. Less eczema, less lower respiratory infections, inner ear infections. The list goes on and on and on. For women, for mothers, the benefits include less ovarian cancer, less breast cancer, premenopausal breast cancer, that's the delineation there. Of course, less postpartum hemorrhage because as the baby nurses, oxytocin is released. That squeezes the uterus, you don't bleed. And oxytocin, as we know, is the love drug. And it relaxes mother, it relaxes baby, it makes them sleep. It makes us all fall in love with our babies. The other benefits to mothers are fewer hip fractures after menopause if you breastfed your babies. And the longer you breastfeed your babies, the more the benefits. So our culture is not really supportive of breastfeeding babies in general, especially babies that are running around and talking. There's some kind of cultural problem with that, and not necessarily in other countries, in other parts of the world. In fact, you see that everywhere, other than in Europe and in the United States. But here, tandem nursing is very common around the world, which is you can either be pregnant and nursing another baby, or you could have a little tiny baby that's just been born and be nursing a toddler at the same time. This goes on everywhere. It's not so common here, but it should be. So I'm all about promoting breastfeeding right now in every possible way. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything to add to that?
No. Well, I think, I think here in the Bay Area, there is a lot of support. I've breastfeed in public all the time, and I've never had any incident where I felt uncomfortable. It could be where I hang out or where I go and what I do, but also being in Mama Circle and being with other moms who have older infants, toddlers that are nursing. I feel it's totally acceptable and and okay to do. So it might be my own attitude. But I've traveled to Europe and nursed planes, trains, and automobiles. It doesn't really matter, and I've never really felt like I was not doing the right thing for my daughter. Partially because of a lot of the support that I get from Chris and others as well. So it's really important to have someone like Chris in your life to really be able to share 20 years of experience of nursing your child and taking care of your child holistically.
We'd like ideally for our own mothers and our own sisters and our own aunties to come and help us after a baby's born, but if you remember, in the last 3 generations, 2 to 3 generations, they didn't breastfeed. There was very aggressive marketing of formula in this country, and that still goes on in a lot of third world countries, which is why we boycott certain products. I don't know if I can mention that here, but Nestle's is still promoting formula in many, many countries, where the mothers go home with the formula from the hospital or the clinic where they've given birth, and they have the formula, and they continue to give the formula until they run really low and they realize they don't have money to go buy more, so they add water to it, and it dilutes the formula. The babies get very sick with diarrhea, they usually die, or they add water that's not clean, and so the babies get all kinds of gastric problems from that and end up dying of malnutrition as well. We've been boycotting, the World Health Organization has been asking for a worldwide boycott of those companies that are still promoting formula instead of breastfeeding. And the same goes with HIV and AIDS. It's better to exclusively breastfeed, even though you may give HIV and AIDS to the baby. In third world countries, it's better to breastfeed them, because once you start mixing foods in, formulas like the situation I just mentioned, they run a higher risk of getting the AIDS with that kind of a situation, a mixed feeding situation. So in this country where there's formula available and there's good water available, they would probably not promote breastfeeding with HIV. But in other countries, they do. There's a better chance of the baby and the mother surviving longer if you breastfeed with HIV. So it's obviously, and I didn't mention before, dental caries, problems with your teeth, the way our mouths are formed. There's a lot of research being done about sleep apnea being caused by bottle feeding in childhood. And so just the way our mouths are formed and the way we speak are being affected by breastfeeding and bottle feeding. So
I think one thing you mentioned was to me earlier about the cost of the formula.
Yeah, one of the studies, the cost of the formula, the Women's, Infants, and Children, the WIC program in this country in 1997, they usually give new mothers, people with no money, they usually give them a lot of food and formula and different ways to promote nutrition in the early part of life. In 1997, WIC spent, our government, our taxes, spent $567 million on formula alone. Right now, they've been estimating that, there was a good study that came out that estimated that we would save in this country yearly $13 billion if 90% of the women breastfed their babies for 6 months exclusively. 90% of the women breastfeeding for 6 months exclusively would save $13 billion. I'd like that in the budget this year.
That's amazing.
If you want to be patriotic, breastfeed.
Right. So the other thing I wanted to bring up
Yes.
is not just the cost, but the convenience. Because I breastfed my 3 kids, and it was just so convenient.
absolutely.
I didn't have to
And
find
it's sustainable.
bottles. I didn't have to find the formula. It was great. I don't know if you found that's very convenient.
Yeah, all you have to do is pick up the baby and go. It's absolutely fabulous.
Exactly.
And feed yourself.
And feed yourself, obviously take care of yourself. But yeah, traveling, doing, you're constantly there and able to give your child the nutrition that they need. Which is just so easy to do. A lot of people think formula is easier because you don't have to worry about breastfeeding all the time. Absolutely not. I agree with you. You don't have to clean out bottles. You don't have to warm bottles in the middle of the night.
Sterilized nipples.
Exactly.
It goes on
And run the
on.
risk of botulism, which, when that bottle's not clean enough.
I mean, for moms who are out of the house, for example, I do, work out of the house. I do have to pump, and I have to, adhere to some things because I do have to have bottles. But it's just nursing on the go whenever you can is just great to do. Very easy to do.
On the pumping, do you find that now you work and you breastfeed? Now you had said something about writing off the cost of a breast pump.
Just got passed.
Yeah, just this week.
Yeah.
Oh, just
that
this
on your
week?
taxes
How
you can
about
write off your
that?
breast pump because it enables you to go back to work sooner and be a productive member of society.
And save ultimately that $13 million.
That's right. And healthcare costs.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the doula. In our last show, we talked about the birthing doula, and you actually, Chris, talked a little bit about it tonight. But there's after doulas, after birth doulas too, postpartum doula, which we found out tonight. I wanted to ask you, Daniela, how did you know you needed a doula in the first place, and how did you know you needed her after?
So I really hired out a village to have my daughter. I feel like there was, 5 women that were very influential in my birth. a very good friend, my original Bradley teacher, a 12-week course to really understand about birth. I learned a lot. And then my doula, had a wonderful doula, a midwife at the hospital. I did have a hospital birth at the birthing center at UCSF. And then I met Chris and really felt that I needed the support after my doula left to ask the questions, to help with the nursing. Although Chris claims that I did everything correctly, and she came in there, she actually told me, "Well, you don't need me to come back." And I said, "Please come back," because just having her there, just having her saying you're doing everything right is, you know, it's worth every single penny that you could spend on a doula. But really, it's about the knowledge. I mean, Chris has had 20 years of experience. My doula, my birth doula, had experienced many births as well. Even if I had family or close friends, no one has the experience except a professional, is the bottom line.
Right.
And it's definitely worth, I would not consider having a birth without a doula, ever.
I agree.
Before or after birth.
Yes, I agree. So,
If I could just add, so many women feel incompetent after they have a baby. They feel like, not only with the breastfeeding, but, oh, how do I change their diapers, and, or, you know, how do I burp them? And I mean, we just, again, it goes back to not seeing it for very much in our lives. You know, Daniela had just, you held a baby in Mama Circle for the first time when you were pregnant. And, you know, I think that so many people, and our mothers and our mothers' mothers, who were told that formula was the right thing to do, getting back to that, they did the best they could with the information they had.
Yes.
And there are so many women out there still unable to breastfeed, being upset that someone else might have more milk than they do, or they worked so hard at it and they had really sore nipples and they had to give up, or they had some other anatomical issue that came up that can be helped. You know, if you have the people like the doulas or the midwives or the lactation consultants, whoever's around, and like I said, the lactation consultants are going to make a big difference with this new wave of breastfeeding and all the money going into it and all the stuff that there's a lot of emphasis on it right now. Someone coming to your home like right away if you have an issue and helping you with that so you don't give up. Because I just really don't like it if people just say, oh, you know, it's just so hard to breastfeed. I could see the baby wasn't happy, and being good moms, they're thinking the babies aren't happy or getting what they need, so they just decide to stop. And all they would need would be a little bit of help with positioning or latch, or, you know, some other kind of help that might come up, and it can make all the difference. And
helping us talk to our family members, or, you know, and our doctors, for us to feel confident that we're doing the right thing for our babies. You know, Chris and my doula, my birth doula, Risa Tanner, really helped with that, being able to communicate with other people about that we're doing the right things.
Excellent. You can find this episode and other episodes of Pacific Occurrence on our YouTube channel. Thank you.
Hold hands. May the long time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way on, guide your way on.